I was brought up in Asia of missionary parents and lived in an environment which was crawling with ants and all sorts of living things, and as a kid I just became fascinated by all the activity in the garden. Upon returning to New Zealand, I found myself fighting with culture shock, and how I coped with that was to become involved in my books. And to me, biology just became a hobby. It became one of the great fascinations of my life. And thereafter, it was just following the path of least resistance. As I did my bachelor's degree and then a master's in cell biology and immunology, and then a PhD in the same subject. And then I found a position opening up in cancer research, where I've effectively been ever since. So the work I've been involved in has really changed over the 35 years or so since I became a research fellow. Initially, we were involved in anti-cancer drug development, and our particular interest was in anti-cancer drugs which poison an enzyme called topoisomerase II, which is involved in knotting and unknotting DNA. And so if you poison this enzyme, hopefully in cancer cells, it means that their DNA would go into unresolvable knots and the cell would die. Since then, we've been involved in a number of things, and I found myself involved in a group which is looking at a fairly new phenomenon called long non-coding RNA. Now, only 2% of our genome encodes for proteins. The other 98%, until very recently, has had no known function. But a lot of it is copied into RNA, which seems to have its own functions, although they are still largely unknown. Because my parents were involved with the church, they were devout Christians, and you can very easily say that I just became a Christian as a child by osmosis. What I would really have to say is, why do I stay a Christian as an adult, day by day and year by year? And it's because I believe that in the gospel of Jesus, in the story of the Bible, if you like, we have not only the most satisfying worldview, and not only the most satisfying ethic or system of ethics, but we also have a relationship with a self-revealing God, which is, of course, something that no amount of science can ever give us an introduction to. As far as Jesus is concerned, it has been said that he was not only better than us, he was different to us. So there is so much about Jesus. His command, for example, to love your enemies, which simply doesn't reflect a human mindset. And so his teaching is quite literally otherworldly. As a scientist, I would say it's something we don't invent, we discover it. We encounter it by surprise. The other thing, of course, was that much more than a teacher, it was his life, his history, which remains of such outstanding importance. In his death and resurrection, again, we see events which, to me, have the quality of truth. They cannot simply be invented by clever humans. It's my nature and nurture, I think. I'm a teacher by inclination, by profession, by passion. And I get very upset by falsehood. And as we look around ourselves, we see ourselves settling deeper and deeper into what is now acknowledged to be a post-truth society. And where I see falsehood peddled, I just feel I've got to try to put the record straight. As a cancer researcher, I have seen the tobacco industry deny for 50 years the link between tobacco and lung cancer, even though the industry knew it as soon as academic scientists did. I wrote a book on genetics and evolution because I'm so upset by the way that the relationship between theology and evolutionary science is often misexpressed. And finally, my latest book, The Gospel According to Dawkins, it addresses misunderstandings or urban myths which are widely current but desperately wrong about the nature, the person of Jesus and the New Testament, which is our one authoritative witness to his life and his work. So where there is widespread misunderstanding or untruth, what can one do? One must put one's thoughts into paper, otherwise one just seethes. Have I had a problem integrating faith and science? No, I haven't. There are lots of areas of uncertainty, of course. There are things we don't know about. The origin, perhaps, of the human religious impulse. These things are very shady, very partly known at this stage. But a self-revealing God, still involved in his creation, taking it to its consummation. This is where I find science, including historical science, maybe especially historical science, cosmology if I understood it, earth science, geology, and of course evolutionary biology. This is where I find science just as part of the great story which is picked up by the Old Testament and then the New Testament and the history of the church. It's one great saga. That's not an easy question because everyone's different and every science is different. I think keep a level head. I mean, you're going to meet so many people who tell you that science is the only way of knowing. And when you think of it, that is absolutely pathetic because science, we can concede that science is the only way of studying physical matter and energy. But to say that the way of studying physical matter and energy is the only way of studying our personhood and our purpose and our ethics, that's to reduce reality ridiculously to nothing. It's just to exclude from viable discourse all the exciting things that make us human.